Unit 3, Lesson 13 deals with solving 1- and 2-step word problems. Alright, so we got quite a bit to do in this because these problems are going to be a little bit more involved than what we dealt with yesterday in class, which were just pretty generic translations. Now we have to kind of look a little bit more into these word problems. So there's a few things we're going to be doing here. First of all, we're going to learn how to define a variable from a problem. Alright, then we're going to learn how to set up an equation, alright, which is something we worked on a bit yesterday. And then at the end, we're going to do a simple little logic check to make sure our answer makes sense. Okay? Basically, our steps for doing a word problem is pretty simple. First thing you're going to do is you're going to read a problem. Okay? And then just read it once just to get a general understanding. Then you're going to go back and reread it and pull out all the important information. Okay? We need to define our variables, write an equation, and then solve it. Okay? Then we're going to make sure our answer is logical. And remember that with word problems, our numbers have very specific meanings. So we want to make sure we include that meaning by writing a unit with it. Alright? So, example 1, we have a veterinarian assistant who steps on a scale while holding a cat. The weight of the cat and the weight of the assistant is 175 pounds. The assistant weighs 162 pounds. Alright? We are asked specifically to find the weight of the cat. Alright? Now, this idea of defining a variable, alright, is kind of a big deal when we talk about word problems that are very specific like this. Okay? And it's actually pretty easy to do. Alright? But it helps us solve, and it's important to do. So we have find the weight of the cat. That's what we're being told to do. So x is going to be equal to the weight of the cat. So pretty simple, right? You just take that last statement or sentence or question and sum it up right there. That's what x is going to be. Okay? Now let's go ahead. I've already read and kind of reread it because I went back to here. Alright, now we're going to move on to writing our equation. Okay, when we write an equation, alright, if we're ever given a total, so notice here it says the weight of the cat and the assistant is, notice that word, alright, 175. That's a total. So totals are always by themselves. Now how do we get to this total? Well, we're going to take the cat and add the weight of the assistant. Okay, so now I have an equation. It's going to get me to the total of 175. And solving it's pretty simple. I'm going to subtract 162. This is a one-step equation from both sides. I end up with x being equal to 13. Okay? Now, this brings us to steps 6 and 7. Okay? We showed our work. We solved our equation while showing our work. Does this answer make logical sense? And did we put a unit with it? Okay? Well, first of all, logical sense. 13 is the size of a cat. 13 pounds is our unit. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and write that down. You know, that could definitely be the size of a cat. Maybe a bigger cat. I don't know. Alright, but it makes sense. What wouldn't make sense would be an answer like, I don't know, 0 or -5 or -100 or any negative number, or like 0.02 or, you know, I don't know, maybe even into the like hundreds or something. Alright, so we have a very limited range we could work in. Alright, but logic allows us to say, yeah, that makes sense. There's 13 pounds, sure, that could happen. Alright, doesn't mean you're 100% right, but it catches most of the mistakes when you do it. Alright, let's move on to example 2. Alright, we have Justin bought a magazine for $4. He spent, he bought some notepads as well for $5 each. Alright, he spent a total of $24. How many notepads did he buy? Alright, so the question says how many notepads did he buy? So x is going to be the number of notepads he got. That's all we could say. Alright, so now we know what we're looking for. Okay, we were given a total. The total is 24. Total always goes by itself. Okay, how did we get to 24? Well, there was a $4 magazine and some notepads that were $5 each. Alright, each means that every time he bought a notepad, he paid $5. So that means 5x. We're adding these two together to get to a total. All right. Notice X, by the way, our definition is the number of notepads. So if he had one notepad, that's 5 times 1, that's $5. 2 notepads would get us to $10. 3 notepads would get us to 15, and so on. Now we're going to solve our equation. So we're going to do this. That's going to be 5x is equal to 20. We're going to divide, and we get 4. All right, he bought 4 notepads. So let me label my answer. And again, this is another logical answer. Here's some numbers that would not be logical. 4.5, for example. How can you buy half a notepad? Any negative, any 0. None of those would make sense. You can't buy -7 notepads. All right. I guess you could buy 0 notepads. So let me eliminate the 0. So negatives, all right, and in this case, any decimals would not work. Okay. Question number 3. How old am I? All right. So X is going to be your age. Age. Okay. If 500 reduced by 2 times my age is 372. So is equals 372. That's easy. All right. Now I have to deal with this. 500 reduced. Reduced means it's getting smaller. So we're subtracting 2 times my age. Okay. So we're going to go ahead and do a subtraction here. Whatever I do to one side, I need to do the exact same thing to the other side. And we're going to get -128. By the way, if you're thinking, why didn't he add, I see a subtraction. And remember, we want this to be 0 and 500 minus 500 0. So we divide by -2. And I'm going to write this over to the side. X equals, what's that going to be, 64. So this person is 64 years old. All right. Let's go ahead and move on. We have a few more to go through here. All right. 2 more problems. We have Joe sold half of his video games and then bought 3 more games. He now has 8 games. How many games did he start with? This question is what you're being asked to find. So that's what our X is going to be in the problem. Number of games Joe started with. Okay? It's always good to know what you're doing before doing it. Alright? That way, again, we can make some logical sense of our answer. Alright? I'm going to look for a total. It says Joe sold half his games, then bought 3 more. He now has 8, so he has a total of 8 games. Alright? So that takes care of that. Alright? He sold half of his video games. So that's a half. We put it over 2. Then he bought 3 more. That means he increased his number by 3. Alright, now once again we set up our equation. Now we need to solve it. And again, like I said before, if you don't know how to solve this, there are plenty of videos for you to watch. Alright, earlier on in this particular unit. So 10 is the answer I come up with, which means Joe started with 10 games. Alright. Easy enough. Okay, now let's think about this, okay, in terms of logic. Alright, 10 again is a whole number. If I ended up with a decimal number, that would not be a good sign. You can't have a decimal like a half of a video game. Alright, again, negative numbers would not make sense here. Okay, so just make sure you're doing a quick little thing. Does this answer make sense? Alright, last one. Haley has $21. She buys 8 tickets for a basketball game and has $5 left over. Question: how much did each ticket cost? So X is going to equal cost of each ticket. My equation. Alright. Haley had $21. Alright, she buys 8 tickets and has $5 left. So her total, the amount of money she has, is $21. How are we going to get to $21? Well, we're going to buy 8 tickets and have an extra $5 left over. So these two are going to equal that. Alright, so let's go ahead and solve it. It's going to be 16 divided by 8, x equals 2. So the cost of each ticket is $2. Now in this particular case, would decimals make sense? Like if we had 2.5? Sure, because that would be $2.50. So when we talk about money, decimals do make sense. Alright? Whole numbers make sense. Negative numbers doesn't really make sense. The cost of a ticket's negative $2. What does that mean? They give you $2 and then you get to go in? Alright, so again, quick little logic usually helps out an awful lot. It doesn't take long to think about, does your answer make sense or not? Alright, if you have any questions, remember sign up for 1C time. Remember, you could always rewatch videos. Alright, try to make sense out of what you're seeing. Be an active learner. This is not like watching TV. Make sure you're doing your job.